Today, we're going to look at 10 players on the offensive side of the football the Aggies are going to have to stop this year. And the number one player on my list is Quinn Ewers.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down, the sports stop sportsing like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, we've been talking a lot about the Aggies team as a whole, this football team, and we've been talking about opponents, but kind of more in an overview sense. And today, I want to talk a little bit about some players that Texas A&M needs to be ready for. So we'll do defense again this week as well, but today we're going to do offense. And so I've got 10 players that are not just in the SEC, also because I have a Notre Dame player as well, but 10 players that Texas A&M needs to be ready for, be game planned for. And Quinn Ewers is my number one person on this list. Now, hear me out. I do. You got to remember, I don't have Quinn Ewers as the best quarterback in the SEC. I would take Jackson Dart over him. I would take Beck over him, probably Milroe. But at the end of the day, we're talking about teams that Texas A&M plays for this list. So Quinn Ewers, I feel like it's got to be annoying. It's got to be annoying, and I don't want to sit here and talk positive about Texas and their players. Like, that's not what I want to do, but I also have to be legitimate in, what I say here on this podcast. So, I have to tell it how it is, and I think that Quinn Ewers and Texas collectively are going to have a good season. Now, y'all know my opinion on the fact that I believe the Aggies can beat Texas this year. I really do. I believe that when Texas comes to Kyle Field, that this is going to be a really good football game, and the Aggies can win that game. But I think Quinn Ewers is a better quarterback than people are giving him credit for. I want to pull up his numbers from last year. Last year he threw for 3,479 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. I mean, once again, that is a pretty darn good season. And when it mattered the most, he played pretty well. So you got the he didn't have his best game against Washington numbers wise. He did have 318 yards, and he didn't throw any picks, but he did. He was 55% completion percentage, just not incredible. On 43 attempts, it's not the worst thing ever, but it's one of his worst numbers of the year. But then in the Big 12 championship, he was really good. 35-46, 452 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. But still, I mean, you take that all day long from Ewers. And I just, once again, I believe he is a really good quarterback. I don't want to sit here and have to talk good about Quinn Ewers. I don't. I'd rather sit here and say he's awful, but he's not. That's the reality. You got to tell it how it is. And I think that he is going to lead Texas to a good season. And I believe that the one thing that's going to get in the way of Texas potentially making the playoff, and things could shape out differently. Now this 12-team playoff makes it a little different, but is the Aggies. So, I am all in on Ewers having a good season. I think he's a great player, but I also think that they have a tough schedule and he has a tough go of it as well. Welcome to the SEC. We're not going to throw penalties for the horns down. That's just the reality here. We're allowed to do that. But, my point here is I think Quinn Ewers is the player of these names that I have here. I look at it and I go, which of these players could cause Texas A&M the most problems of these players that I picked? And I think Quinn Ewers is the number one guy. So that is my number one person. Number 2, I have Luther Burden from Missouri. Now, this dude is absolutely, once again, if you are in a dynasty fantasy football league, I would find a way to get this guy on your team when he's draft eligible. Last year, 86 receptions, 1,212 yards, 9 touchdowns. I mean, he's just a great player, 5'11", 208 pounds. It's hard to argue that he's not if he's not the best wide receiver in college football, it's hard to name one or two better than him. I mean, he's an elite player who is going to be a top 10 pick, I believe, in the NFL draft. Ton of upside. In the year before, he had 375 yards, 6 touchdowns. But, I mean, he's just a special football player. And we talk about one of the question marks for Texas A&M heading into this season is the secondary. And who is going to stop Luther Burden? You know what I mean? Who is going to get out there and stop him? And y'all know my opinion that I believe Texas A&M's secondary is going to be better than we anticipate. I think it's going to be pretty good. But at the same time, this kid is better than any, you know what I mean? He's a better receiver than any of our cornerbacks. That's just the reality. So can someone stop him? And if he has 190 yards and 3 touchdowns, it's even at home going to be hard to beat Missouri. So Luther Burden is my number 2 guy. Number 3 is an interesting one. I have Jarquez Hunter, the running back at Auburn. I think that he is a really good player. I want to pull up his numbers from last year. Because I believe he didn't have the year many anticipated. Yeah, he had 159 carries for 909 yards, 7 touchdowns, 5.7 yards carry. So the numbers were fine. I think that you expected him to have 1,000 yards and probably a few more touchdowns than 7. I expect him to be 1,000-yard rusher this year. I expect him to have 10 touchdowns. I expect that yards per carry average to be right around where it was last year. Really good player. One of those compact running backs, 5'10", 209 pounds. You don't want to get in his way. And he's going to run through you, run around you, run past you. So this Texas A&M front 7 has got to game plan for Jarquez Hunter. He's a really good football player. He's fast. He does everything right. And so he's a guy you have to be ready for him. You have to know, hey, he's coming. He's coming down the tracks. He's a great football player. He's a great running back. And another guy I think could be a 3rd round NFL draft pick after this season if he has the year many anticipate him to have. So Jarquez Hunter is I think one of, if not the best running backs in the SEC. You got Judkins is now gone from Ole Miss, and so you've got some good running backs in this league, but I don't know who I'm taking. Maybe the kid is it Etienne that transferred? He's a good player, but I'm still not the one on the Jags. I'm talking about the not Trevor or no, not. Why am I okay? Now I got to figure this out. Etienne. Now this is because one plays for the Jaguars and one Travis plays for the Jaguars, and then Trevor, yes, is with Georgia. So that is the brother situation there. But, I think that Jarquez Hunter could be the best running back in the SEC. I really do. My next name here is the receiver from LSU, Kyren Lacy. Last year, 30 receptions, 558 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's a player that I think, and how many games did he play in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He played in 10 games, so didn't play a full season. Still had some great numbers. Didn't have a great game against Texas A&M. Ironically, only had 1 reception for 15 yards last year. But about 600 yards, 7 touchdowns, good numbers. Experienced player, 6'2", 213 pounds, big receiver, really good player. I expect him to have a good season. I expect him to have an all SEC caliber type of season. And another guy that's going to have to come to Kyle Field, but still, I think Kyren Lacy is a great football player. Shifty, quick, does it all, but powerful and strong as well. I like his game. I like his film. He's a dude who I think could be a sneaky, really good receiver in this league. So he's a guy that you have got to be able to shut down if you want to beat LSU at home. So that is a guy that I'm definitely paying attention to. I've got 6 more names that the Aggies need to be ready for. We'll talk about those players And what I learned, doing this experiment was, man, and this is only, there's only 8 SEC teams. So like, this isn't even the full SEC. And there's a lot of good football players on this list. Point being, there's a lot of talent you got to go against. A lot of players who single-handedly can win a game. So it's good to know who you're going against. And that's why I think this is a fun conversation. But we'll talk about those other 6 players coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I gotta tell you about our friends over at Ibotta. Sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids. What do these have in common? You're probably buying a ton again this summer, but don't stress about the cost. Use Ibotta and get cash back on all of your purchases when you stock up on all of your summer essentials. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you are purchasing. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and they will give you $5 just for giving it a shot. Also want to tell you about our friends over at Factor Meals. Warmer, sunnier days are calling. Fuel up for them with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for summer thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor Fresh, never frozen meals are absolutely incredible, and you got to give these guys a chance. They sent us some. This stuff's really good. I'm working on dieting and stuff, and these meals were great. I love the way it's all set up. You've got to go check them out. Head to factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 and use code LOCKEDONCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LOCKEDONCollege50 at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off next month while your subscription is active. So my next player I want to talk about, and this is an interesting one because I think this might be I think some might not agree, but this player is Rocket Sanders, who of course transferred away from Arkansas. So now the Aggies will get to face him when he is playing for the South Carolina Gamecocks. But, I'll tell you this, I've always thought that Rocket Sanders is a really good running back. I've always been in on him as a player. Injuries and different things have slowed him at times. Last year, he didn't have his best season, at South Carolina. I mean, he was, for lack of better words, he was not great. He didn't play it. He only played in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. He wasn't on the field much. He only had 209 rushing yards. And did he have any receiving yards? And a few receiving yards, about 100 receiving yards? Yeah, right. I mean, 100, 150, whatever. Point being, he didn't have the season I and many others expected him to have last year. But I think that he's going to be able to figure something out. I mean, the yards per carry last year was 3.4, only had 2 touchdowns. It was not his year. But the 6-foot, 230-pound running back is a better player than he showed last season. If he's able to stay on the field, I think Rocket Sanders is in for a really big year for his new team over in Columbia. So that'll be interesting, but he's a guy that I think is better than people are giving him credit for. My next name I have here is Brady Cook, the quarterback over at Missouri, a guy who I think you could call him a game manager. I do. I think you could sit there and call him a game manager, and I wouldn't be upset about it. I think he's a great player. I do, but I also think that he's a guy – he's not going to win you a game, but he's not going to lose you a game type of thing. But that's not, you know what I mean? Like, he's a good football player, but he's not going to be this world-beating all-SEC talent is my take there. But he's a veteran quarterback who's going to get the job done. Last season for the Tigers in what a season that I don't think really anyone saw coming. Brady Cook had 3,317 passing yards, 21 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. His QBR was right behind Quinn Ewers. Ewers was 17th. His is 18th at 77.6. But, he's just a player that, like I said, is he going to put 530 yards on a team? I don't know about that, but he's going to get the job done. He's going to win football games. He's going to make smart decisions. He's going to take care of the football. He's a good player. He's a quarterback that you don't like seeing to come play in your stadium, knowing he's cool, he's calm, he's collected, he's been there, he's played a lot of football. So, I don't think, once again, if we were playing Alabama or Ole Miss or Georgia, Brady Cook would not be on this list. But the quarterbacks you're playing aren't some of the best in the SEC, and I think Brady Cook is a guy you got to watch out for. And then my next name is Riley Leonard, our first non-SEC guy, the quarterback for Notre Dame, and ironically, he was Mike Elko's quarterback last year at Duke. Riley Leonard is a player. He's just a gritty football player. I am a huge Riley Leonard fan. I do not like that I'm going to have to root against him. Like, genuinely, I am a huge Riley Leonard guy. So last year, obviously banged up a lot, in and out of the lineup, had 1,100 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He also ran for, what did he say? What did he run for here? He ran for 352 yards last season and 4 touchdowns. He's a dual threat guy. He can use his legs, 6'4", 216, larger quarterback. But he was banged up last year. I want to see exactly how many games he actually played in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He played in 7 games, but I think 1 or 2 of these he was in and out of the lineup with injuries. So, it was not a full season for Leonard. And he's a player, when he's healthy, he's a really good football player. I think he's got a high upside. He's just a gritty guy. I like watching him play. He plays football the right way. I like his game. I like how he goes about it. So he's a guy that, once again, another veteran coming into Kyle Field that could give you problems. But it's going to be fun to watch him and his old coach go at it in week 1. But still, a player that definitely you got to pay attention to. The next name I have here is another Texas player, and that is Isaiah Bond. Of course, used to be with Alabama. Last year had 48 receptions, 668 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 13.9, yards per catch. A player that really, is an incredible deep threat. And last year, I know last year's not this year, but last year that was Texas A&M's issue. They got absolutely slaughtered on the deep balls. And I think that Coach Elko obviously went out of his way to recruit and hopefully fix these issues, because you just can't deal with getting killed on these deep balls. It can't happen again. So hopefully better safety play, better corner play will lead to the Aggies not getting burned on deep balls anymore. But if they're going to get burned on deep balls, it's going to be with a player like Bond. The next name I have here is an interesting one, because I think another name I don't think a lot of people would agree with, but it's Lenoris Sellers, the new quarterback for South Carolina after Rattler moves on to the NFL. I think that Sellers is a really good player. He's a dual threat quarterback. I think he's a high upside guy. He's one of those guys where he can have a game where he runs around in circles, throws some touchdowns, and you just go, what just happened? We just lost, especially having to play him on the road. I like Sellers. I am buying low, stock-wise on Sellers right now. He's a player that I'm not excited to have to play at their place. He's a good quarterback. He can move with the football. He's quick. He's a good thrower of the football. High upside guy that I'm definitely a little bit scared to play. I think he's a player that you can surprise. He's a player that can have a game where you just go, what just happened? Like that, genuinely. So I'm definitely paying attention to him. And then the last name on this list is one that's going to be a little sour. And probably some might go, what? There's better receivers than him. But it's Cam Coleman. I've watched, film. I've watched, obviously, when he was committed to Texas A&M. But then what he's done so far at Auburn. I think this kid is going to be absolutely special. I think he ends up being a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. I thought that when he was committed to Texas A&M, and then unfortunately, with the coaching changes, weren't able to hold on. And he's just a player that has a really, really high upside. Higher, I think it's right there with Luther Burden when it comes to upside. So, a guy, and especially, when Texas A&M is going to be playing him, he's going to be, 10 games in. He'll have played 10 games in college, so he will be settled into the college game. It's not like you're getting him his first game in college football. So that's definitely something I'm looking at, definitely something that I'm worried about. I think he's going to be a special player, and I really wish he was wearing maroon and not navy and orange. We need to talk about where Texas versus Texas A&M is ranked when it comes to the best games in the SEC, because this list has it way too low. We'll talk about that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So 24/7 Sports put out a list where they ranked the top games in the SEC. It says top 10 SEC football games of 2024, feature rivalry battles, showdowns for college football positioning, yada, yada. And they have Texas versus Texas A&M as the 9th best game. And let's read this blurb first. While conference realignment marked the end of numerous traditional rivalries, it also rekindles many dormant series. None are as heated as the Lone Star showdown between Texas and Texas A&M. The revitalization of this rivalry already began this offseason with the fan bases barbs towards each other and will reach a fever pitch November 30th when the Longhorns travel to College Station. Kyle Field will be as ruckus. Is that ruckus? Man, some of these words. As ever, when it hosts a sleeping giant in college football rivalry circles, and both teams promise to be in the final stages of a strong regular season. So ahead of this game, you got Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Alabama, LSU, Missouri, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Ole Miss, Georgia, Bama, Georgia, Texas. I agree with some of those games, but I don't know how you can't look at this Texas A&M game and look at it and go, that is going to be one of the most anticipated football games in college football this season. There's a chance going into this that, if the Aggies hit their upside, and I've talked about, I believe that they can win 9 football games with a loss to Texas. I think there's a chance that both of these teams are fighting. Obviously, Texas will for sure, I think regardless, they'll be in the playoff conversation when that game happens. I think there's a 10% chance that Texas A&M is also in that conversation, to where this football game might have more on the line than just, the rivalry's back. But that's why I think it's ranked low. Is I think that the only reason it's on this list at all is because people are saying, well, the rivalry's back, we got to rank it. I don't think they're looking at it as like, man, this could be a serious football game with a lot on the line. And that's what I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a serious football game with a ton on the line. So, as I've said, I am so excited for that football game. I think highly of Texas when it comes to how good I think they're going to be this season. I do think they're going to be a great football team, as much as it pains me to say that. But it's a rivalry that we haven't seen in a while. And once again, someone my age doesn't fully get to appreciate, because, I haven't gotten to fully take it all in, and I'm finally going to get to take it all in. And I am so excited about it because I know it's going to be special. And I think it's on top of just, it's a rivalry. It's going to be a great football game. And I think that's going to be the case for years and years and years. I don't think that's going to change. I think both Texas and Texas A&M have solid coaches. They're recruiting well. They're developing players well. I think it's the rivalry. It's not just going to be a chirp off the field rivalry. I think it's going to be a great on the football field rivalry as well, which is going to bring a lot of joy and probably arguments between to both fan bases. So I'm anxious for this game. I think it should be considered a top 5 game, excitement wise in the SEC this season. But I do think once Texas A&M starts to play and they have a better season than many anticipate, that people will start to buy into, oh, this is going to be a really good football game. But I can't wait to see that one play out. That's going to do it for today's episode here at Locked On Aggies. Hope everyone has a great Monday. Really, really appreciate y'all being here. Almost 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, so keep hitting that button. It helps the show a ton. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone has an outstanding rest of their day today, and we will see you tomorrow right here at Locked On Aggies.